Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right. Always bear in mind that your own resolution to succeed is more important than any other. I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed, but I am bound to live by the light that I have. I must stand with anybody that stands right, and stand with him while he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong. All that I am, or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother. The ballad is stronger than the bullet. When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. And that's my religion. We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. As I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. This expresses my idea of democracy. I have always found that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice. Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? We should be too big to take offense and too noble to give it. Repeal the Missouri Compromise, repeal all compromises, repeal the Declaration of Independence, repeal all past history. You still cannot repeal human nature. It will be the abundance of man's heart that slavery extension is wrong, and out of the abundance of his heart, his mouth will continue to speak. I do not think much of a man who is not wiser today than he was yesterday. No man is good enough to govern another man without the other's consent. Whenever I hear anyone arguing for slavery, I feel a strong impulse to see it tried on him personally. You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today. How many legs does a dog have if you call his tail a leg? 4. Saying that a tail is a leg doesn't make it a leg. You can fool all the people some of the time, and some of the people all the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. Be sure you put your feet in the right place, then stand firm. I am a slow walker, but I never walk back. Government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. It has been my experience that folks who have no vices have very few virtues. Don't worry when you are not recognized, but strive to be worthy of recognition. My great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failure. That some achieve great success, is proof to all that others can achieve it as well. Marriage is neither heaven nor hell, it is simply purgatory. He has a right to criticize, who has a heart to help. This country, with its institutions, belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it, or exercise their revolutionary right to overthrow it. I like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives. I like to see a man live so that his place will be proud of him. No matter how much cats fight, there always seem to be plenty of kittens. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Let's have faith that right makes might, and in that faith let us, to the end, dare to do our duty as we understand it. Discourage litigation. Persuade your neighbors to compromise whenever you can. As a peacemaker, the lawyer has superior opportunity of being a good man. There will still be business enough. with malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds. The things I want to know are in books. My best friend is the man who'll get me a book I ain't read. All the armies of Europe, Asia and Africa combined, with all the treasure of the earth, our own excepted, in their military chest, with a Bonaparte for a commander, could not by force, take a drink from the Ohio, or make a track on the Blue Ridge, in a trial of 1,000 years. I want it said of me by those who knew me best, that I always plucked a thistle and planted a flower where I thought a flower would grow. The best way to get a bad law repealed is to enforce it strictly. If I were two-faced, would I be wearing this one? Labor is prior to, and independent of, capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor, and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital, and deserves much the higher consideration. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. No man has a good enough memory to be a successful liar. Most folks are as happy as they make up their minds to be. The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. Character is like a tree and reputation like a shadow. The shadow is what we think of it, the tree is the real thing. I will prepare and someday my chance will come. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep on doing so until the end. I am a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts. If this is coffee, please bring me some tea, but if this is tea, please bring me some coffee. The shepherd drives the wolf from the sheep's throat, for which the sheep thanks the shepherd as his liberator, while the wolf denounces him for the same act as the destroyer of liberty. Plainly, the sheep and the wolf are not agreed upon a definition of liberty. My dream is of a place and a time where America will once again be seen as the last best hope of earth. When you have got an elephant by the hind legs and he is trying to run away, it's best to let him run. The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. A friend is one who has the same enemies as you have. I remember my mother's prayers and they have always followed me. They have clung to me all my life. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves, and under the rule of a just God, cannot long retain it. Avoid popularity if you would have peace. If we could first know where we are, and whither we are tending, we could then better judge what to do, and how to do it. Important principles may, and must, be inflexible. Public sentiment is everything. With public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of freemen, we must live through all time, or die by suicide. The way for a young man to rise is to improve himself in every way he can, never suspecting that anybody wishes to hinder him. Surely God would not have created such a being as man, with an ability to grasp the infinite, to exist only for a day. No, no, man was made for immortality. If once you forfeit the confidence of your fellow citizens, you can never regain their respect and esteem. Let not him who is houseless pull down the house of another, but let him work diligently and build one for himself, thus by example assuring that his own shall be safe from violence when built. Don't interfere with anything in the Constitution. That must be maintained, for it is the only safeguard of our liberties. Books serve to show a man that those original thoughts of his aren't very new at all. Tact is the ability to describe others as they see themselves. A man watches his pear tree day after day, impatient for the ripening of the fruit. Let him attempt to force the process, and he may spoil both fruit and tree. But let him patiently wait, and the ripe pear at length falls into his lap. And the leading rule for the lawyer, as for the man of every calling, is diligence. Common-looking people are the best in the world. That is the reason the Lord makes so many of them. I can make more generals, but horses cost money. With the fearful strain that is on me night and day, if I did not laugh, I should die. In this sad world of ours, sorrow comes to all, and to the young, it comes with bitterest agony because it takes them unawares. I have had experience enough to know what I say. 77 years ago our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Everyone desires to live long, but no one would be old. We here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. True patriotism is better than the wrong kind of piety. I have talked with great men, and I do not see how they differ from others. It is rather for us here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. With public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. I don't know who my grandfather was. I am much more concerned to know what his grandson will be. Every man is said to have his peculiar ambition. Whether it be true or not, I can say, for one, that I have no other so great as that of being truly esteemed of my fellow men, by rendering myself worthy of their esteem. How far I shall succeed in gratifying this ambition is yet to be developed. I care not much for a man's religion whose dog and cat are not the better for it. I know that the Lord is always on the side of the right, but it is my constant anxiety and prayer that I and this nation may be on the Lord's side. I never had a policy, I have just tried to do my very best each and every day. Any people anywhere, being inclined and having the power, have the right to rise up, and shake off the existing government, and form a new one that suits them better. This is a most valuable, a most sacred right, a right, which we hope and believe, is to liberate the world. If the great American people will only keep their temper, on both sides of the line, the troubles will come to an end, and the question which now distracts the country will be settled just as surely as all other difficulties of like character which have originated in this government have been adjusted. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. We, of this Congress and this administration, will be remembered in spite of ourselves. No personal significance, or insignificance, can spare one or another of us. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down in honor or dishonor, to the latest generation. The time comes upon every public man when it is best for him to keep his lips closed. It has so happened in all ages of the world that some have labored, and others have, without labor, enjoyed a large proportion of the fruits. I have great respect for the semicolon. It is a mighty handy little fellow. There is no grievance that is a fit object of redress by mob law. If there is anything that a man can do well, I say let him do it. Give him a chance. I desire so to conduct the affairs of this administration that if at the end I have lost every other friend on earth, I shall at least have one friend left, and that friend shall be down inside of me. Someday I shall be president. That I am not a member of any Christian church is true, but I have never denied the truth of the scriptures, and I have never spoken with intentional disrespect of religion in general, or of any denomination of Christians in particular. Our defense is in the preservation of the Spirit, which prizes liberty as a heritage of all men, in all lands, everywhere. Destroy this spirit and you have planted the seeds of despotism around your own doors. I pass my life in preventing the storm from blowing down the tent, and I drive in the pegs as fast as they are pulled up. Knavery and flattery are blood relations. When I am getting ready to reason with a man, I spend 1/3 of my time thinking about myself and what I'm going to say, and 2/3 about him and what he is going to say. A woman is the only thing I am afraid of that I know will not hurt me. Towering genius disdains a beaten path. It seeks regions hitherto unexplored. Never regret what you don't write. Hold on with a bulldog grip, and chew and choke as much as possible. Stand with anybody that stands right, stand with him while he is right and part with him when he goes wrong. And what kills a skunk is the publicity it gives itself. These men ask for just the same thing, fairness, and fairness only. This, so far as in my power, they, and all others, shall have. When I hear a man preach, I like to see him act as if he were fighting bees. Gold is good in its place, but loving, brave, patriotic men are better than gold. The highest art is always the most religious, and the greatest artist is always a devout person. Slavery is founded in the selfishness of man's nature, opposition to it is his love of justice. These principles are an eternal antagonism, and when brought into collision so fiercely, as slavery extension brings them, shocks and throes and convulsions must ceaselessly follow. My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union, and is not either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it, and if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. We think the Dred Scott decision is erroneous. We know the court that made it has often overruled its own decisions, and we shall do what we can to have it overrule this. I go to assume a task more difficult than that which devolved upon Washington. Unless the great God, who assisted him, shall be with me and aid me, I must fail, but if the same omniscient mind and almighty arm that directed and protected him shall guide and support me, I shall not fail, I shall succeed. I was born and have ever remained in the most humble walks of life. I am rather inclined to silence. The mystic chords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the angels of our nature. Some single mind must be master, else there will be no agreement in anything. These capitalists generally act harmoniously and in concert to fleece the people. and now that they have got into a quarrel with themselves, we are called upon to appropriate the people's money to settle the quarrel. It is not my nature, when I see a people borne down by the weight of their shackles, the oppression of tyranny, to make their life more bitter by heaping upon them greater burdens, but rather would I do all in my power to raise the yoke than to add anything that would tend to crush them. Illinois surpasses every other spot of equal extent upon the face of the globe in fertility of soil and in the proportionable amount of the same which is sufficiently level for actual cultivation. There is another old poet whose name I do not now remember who said, "Truth is the daughter of time." If a man had more than one life, I think a little hanging would not hurt this one, but after he is once dead, we cannot bring him back, no matter how sorry we may be, so the boy shall be pardoned. I hold that while man exists, it is his duty to improve not only his own condition, but to assist in ameliorating mankind. I do not think I could myself be brought to support a man for office whom I knew to be an open enemy of, and scoffer at, religion. Concede that the new government of Louisiana is only to what it should be, as the egg is to the fowl, we shall sooner have the fowl by hatching the egg than by smashing it. In great contests each party claims to act in accordance with the will of God. Both may be, and one must be wrong. If I like a thing, it just sticks after once reading it or hearing it. For my part, I desire to see the time when education, and by its means, morality, sobriety, enterprise and industry, shall become much more general than at present, and should be gratified to have it in my power to contribute something to the advancement of any measure which might have a tendency to accelerate the happy period. If there should prove to be one real, living free state Democrat in Kansas, I suggest that it might be well to catch him and stuff and preserve his skin as an interesting specimen of that soon to be extinct variety of the genus Democrat. If you think you can slander a woman into loving you, or a man into voting for you, try it till you are satisfied. If ever I feel the soul within me elevate and expand to those dimensions not wholly unworthy of its almighty architect, it is when I contemplate the cause of my country, deserted by all the world beside, and I standing up boldly and lone and hurling defiance at her victorious oppressors. The assertion that all men are created equal was of no practical use in effecting our separation from Great Britain, and it was placed in the Declaration not for that, but for future use. I think that slavery is wrong, morally, socially, and politically. I desire that it should be no further spread in these United States, and I should not object if it should gradually terminate in the whole Union. I hope to stand firm enough to not go backward, and yet not go forward fast enough to wreck the country's cause. To give victory to the right, not bloody bullets, but peaceful ballots only, are necessary. Don't swap horses in crossing a stream. He who would be no slave must consent to have no slave. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves and, under a just God, cannot long retain it. No policy that does not rest upon some philosophical public opinion can be permanently maintained. We can succeed only by concert. It is not, can any of us imagine better, but can we all do better? In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in that we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save, or meanly lose, the last best hope of earth. Allow the president to invade a neighboring nation whenever he shall deem it necessary to repel an invasion, and you allow him to do so whenever he may choose to say he deems it necessary for such purpose, and you allow him to make war at pleasure. A private soldier has as much right to justice as a major general. And you may think it was a very little thing, and in these days, it seems to me like a trifle, but it was a most important incident in my life. I could scarcely credit that I, the poor boy, had earned $1 in less than a day, that by honest work, I had earned $1. I was a more hopeful and thoughtful boy from that time. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. The people will save their government, if the government itself will allow them. I have always hated slavery, I think, as much as any abolitionist. I have been an old line Whig. I have always hated it, but I have always been quiet about it until this new era of the introduction of the Nebraska Bill began. It is a great piece of folly to attempt to make anything out of my early life. Among the Friends of Union, there is great diversity of sentiment and of policy in regard to slavery and the African race among us. Upon the subject of education, not presuming to dictate any plan or system respecting it, I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we, as a people, can be engaged in. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved, I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing, or all the other. Republicans are for both the man and the dollar, but in case of conflict the man before the dollar. Whatever woman may cast her lot with mine, should any ever do so, it is my intention to do all in my power to make her happy and contented, and there is nothing I can imagine that would make me more unhappy than to fail in the effort. The people know their rights, and they are never slow to assert and maintain them when they are invaded. Let reverence for the laws be breathed by every American mother to the lisping babe that prattles on her lap. Let it be taught in schools, in seminaries, and in colleges. Let it be written in primers, spelling books, and in almanacs. Let it be preached from the pulpit, proclaimed in legislative halls, and enforced in courts of justice. Ballots are the rightful and peaceful successors to bullets. I go for all sharing the privileges of the government, who assist in bearing its burdens. Consequently, I go for admitting all whites to the right of suffrage, who pay taxes or bear arms, by no means excluding females. Standing as I do, with my hand upon this staff, and under the folds of the American flag, I ask you to stand by me so long as I stand by it. Why was the amendment, expressly declaring the right of the people to exclude slavery, voted down? Plainly enough now, the adoption of it would have spoiled the niche for the Dred Scott decision. It is a quality of revolutions not to go by old lines or old laws, but to break up both and make new ones. If I were to try to read, much less answer, all the attacks made on me, this shop might as well be closed for any other business. I never went to school more than 6 months in my life, but I can say this, that among my earliest recollections, I remember how, when a mere child, I used to get irritated when anybody talked to me in a way I could not understand. I understand a ship to be made for the carrying and preservation of the cargo, and so long as the ship can be saved, with the cargo, it should never be abandoned. This Union likewise should never be abandoned unless it fails and the possibility of its preservation shall cease to exist, without throwing passengers and cargo overboard. He who molds the public sentiment makes statutes and decisions possible or impossible to make. It would astonish if not amuse the older citizens to learn that I, a strange, friendless, uneducated, penniless boy, working at $10 per month, had been put down as the candidate of pride, wealth, and aristocratic family distinction. Upon the subjects of which I have treated, I have spoken as I have thought. I may be wrong in regard to any or all of them, but, holding it a sound maxim that it is better only sometimes to be right than at all times to be wrong, so soon as I discover my opinions to be erroneous, I shall be ready to renounce them. My father. Removed from Kentucky to Indiana, in my 8th year. It was a wild region, with many bears and other wild animals still in the woods. There I grew up. Of course, when I came of age, I did not know much. Still somehow, I could read, write, and cipher. But that was all. There may sometimes be ungenerous attempts to keep a young man down, and they will succeed, too, if he allows his mind to be diverted from its true channel to brood over the attempted injury. Never stir up litigation. A worse man can scarcely be found than one who does this. My parents were both born in Virginia, of undistinguished families, second families, perhaps I should say. In so far as the government lands can be disposed of, I am in favor of cutting up the wild lands into parcels so that every poor man may have a home. I perhaps ought to say that individually I never was much interested in the Texas question. I never could see much good to come of annexation, inasmuch as they were already a free Republican people on our own model. It was that which gave promise that in due time the weights should be lifted from the shoulders of all men, and that all should have an equal chance. This is the sentiment embodied in that Declaration of Independence. I have always been an old line Henry Clay Whig. I learned a great many years ago that in a fight between husband and wife, a third party should never get between the woman's skillet and the man's axe helve. Our Declaration of Independence was held sacred by all and thought to include all. But now, to aid in making the bondage of the Negro universal and eternal, it is assailed, sneered at, construed, hawked at, and torn, till, if its framers could rise from their graves, they could not at all recognize it. Extemporaneous speaking should be practiced and cultivated. It is the lawyer's avenue to the public. However able and faithful he may be in other respects, people are slow to bring him business if he cannot make a speech. Being elected to Congress, though I am very grateful to our friends for having done it, has not pleased me as much as I expected. Oh, yes, you Virginians shed barrels of perspiration while standing off at a distance and superintending the work your slaves do for you. It is different with us. Here it is every fellow for himself, or he doesn't get there. I have said 100 times, and I have no inclination to take it back, that I believe there is no right, and ought to be no inclination in the people of the free states to enter into the slave states, and to interfere with the question of slavery at all. I have said that always. When Southern people tell us they are no more responsible for the origin of slavery than we are, I acknowledge the fact. When it is said that the institution exists, and that it is very difficult to get rid of it in any satisfactory way, I can understand and appreciate the saying. The man who could go to Africa and rob her of her children, and then sell them into interminable bondage, with no other motive than that which is furnished by dollars and cents, is so much worse than the most depraved murderer that he can never receive pardon at my hand. We find ourselves under the government of a system of political institutions, conducing more essentially to the ends of civil and religious liberty, than any of which the history of former times tells us. Nothing new here, except my marrying, which to me is a matter of profound wonder. It is with your aid, as the people, that I think we shall be able to preserve, not the country, for the country will preserve itself, but the institutions of the country, those institutions which have made us free, intelligent and happy, the most free, the most intelligent, and the happiest people on the globe. I should like to know if, taking this old Declaration of Independence, which declares that all men are equal upon principle, you begin making exceptions to it, where will you stop? If one man says it does not mean a Negro, why not another say it does not mean some other man? The people themselves, and not their servants, can safely reverse their own deliberate decisions. I believe it is universally understood and acknowledged that all men will ever act correctly, unless they have a motive to do otherwise. By what principle of original right is it that 1/50th or 1/90th of a great nation, by calling themselves a state, have the right to break up and ruin that nation as a matter of original principle? I believe this government cannot endure permanently, half slave and half free. Let the people on both sides keep their self-possession, and just as other clouds have cleared away in due time, so will this, and this great nation shall continue to prosper as before. The point, the power to hurt, of all figures lies in the truthfulness of their application. Biographies, as generally written, are not only misleading but false. In most instances, they commemorate a lie and cheat posterity out of the truth. I am like a man so busy in letting rooms in one end of his house, that he can't stop to put out the fire that is burning the other. To the best of my judgment, I have labored for, and not against, the Union. As I have not felt, so I have not expressed any harsh sentiment towards our Southern brethren. I have constantly declared, as I really believed, the only difference between them and us is the difference of circumstances. In my view of the present aspect of affairs, there is no need of bloodshed and war. There is no necessity for it. I am not in favor of such a course, and I may say in advance, there will be no bloodshed unless it be forced upon the government. The government will not use force unless force is used against it. The legal right of the Southern people to reclaim their fugitives I have constantly admitted. The legal right of Congress to interfere with their institution in the states, I have constantly denied. I was losing interest in politics, when the repeal of the Missouri Compromise aroused me again. What I have done since then is pretty well known. I am naturally anti-slavery. If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. I cannot remember when I did not so think and feel. Either the opponents of slavery will arrest the further spread of it and place it where the public mind shall rest in the belief that it is in course of ultimate extinction, or its advocates will push it forward, till it shall become alike lawful in all the states, old as well as new, north as well as south. That our government should have been maintained in its original form from its establishment until now is not much to be wondered at. It had many props to support it through that period, which now are decayed and crumbled away. Through that period, it was felt by all to be an undecided experiment. Now, it is understood to be a successful one. Every man is said to have his peculiar ambition. Whether it be true or not, I can say for one that I have no other so great as that of being truly esteemed of my fellow men, by rendering myself worthy of their esteem. How far I shall succeed in gratifying this ambition, is yet to be developed. Plainly, the central idea of secession is the essence of anarchy. Let us then turn this government back into the channel in which the framers of the Constitution originally placed it. I have borne a laborious, and, in some respects to myself, a painful part in the contest. Through all, I have neither assailed, nor wrestled with any part of the Constitution. The people, are the rightful masters of both Congresses and courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert it. I am exceedingly anxious that this Union, the Constitution, and the liberties of the people shall be perpetuated in accordance with the original idea for which that struggle was made, and I shall be most happy indeed if I shall be an humble instrument in the hands of the Almighty, and of this, His almost chosen people, for perpetuating the object of that great struggle. The proportions of this rebellion were not for a long time understood. I saw that it involved the greatest difficulties, and would call forth all the powers of the whole country. In a word, I would not take any risk of being entangled upon the river, like an ox jumped half over a fence, and liable to be torn by dogs, front and rear, without a fair chance to gore one way or kick the other. Of our political revolution of '76, we all are justly proud. It has given us a degree of political freedom, far exceeding that of any other nation of the earth. In it the world has found a solution of the long-mooted problem. as to the capability of man to govern himself. In it was the germ which has vegetated, and still is to grow and expand into the universal liberty of mankind. The legitimate object of government is to do for a community of people whatever they need to have done, but cannot do at all, or cannot so well do for themselves in their separate and individual capacities. Our government rests in public opinion. Whoever can change public opinion can change the government, practically just so much. Welcome or unwelcome, agreeable or disagreeable, whether this shall be an entire slave nation, is the issue before us. I think we have fairly entered upon a durable struggle as to whether this nation is to ultimately become all slave or all free, and though I fall early in the contest, it is nothing if I shall have contributed, in the least degree, to the final rightful result. Understanding the spirit of our institutions to aim at the elevation of men, I am opposed to whatever tends to degrade them. I do not mean to say that this government is charged with the duty of redressing or preventing all the wrongs in the world, but I do think that it is charged with the duty of preventing and redressing all wrongs which are wrongs to itself. This is essentially a people's contest. On the side of the Union, it is a struggle for maintaining in the world that form and substance of government, whose leading object is to elevate the condition of men, to lift artificial weights from all shoulders, to clear the paths of laudable pursuit for all, to afford all an unfettered start and a fair chance in the race of life. May our children and our children's children to 1,000 generations continue to enjoy the benefits conferred upon us by a united country, and have cause yet to rejoice under those glorious institutions bequeathed us by Washington and his compeers. The restoration of the rebel states to the Union must rest upon the principle of civil and political equality of both races, and it must be sealed by general amnesty. While we must, by all available means, prevent the overthrow of the government, we should avoid planting and cultivating too many thorns in the bosom of society. It is not merely for today, but for all time to come that we should perpetuate for our children's children this great and free government, which we have enjoyed all our lives. Nowhere in the world is presented a government of so much liberty and equality. To the humblest and poorest amongst us are held out the highest privileges and positions. The present moment finds me at the White House, yet there is as good a chance for your children as there was for my father's. Thoughtful men must feel that the fate of civilization upon this continent is involved in the issue of our contest. When it comes to this, I should prefer emigrating to some country where they make no pretense of loving liberty, to Russia, for instance, where despotism can be taken pure, and without the base alloy of hypocrisy. That is the issue that will continue in this country when these poor tongues of Judge Douglas and myself shall be silent. It is the eternal struggle between these two principles, right and wrong, throughout the world. They are the two principles that have stood face to face from the beginning of time, and will ever continue to struggle. The one is the common right of humanity and the other the divine right of kings. If you are resolutely determined to make a lawyer of yourself, the thing is more than half done already. Always bear in mind that your own resolution to succeed is more important than any other one thing. I know not how to aid you, save in the assurance of one of mature age and much severe experience, that you cannot fail, if you resolutely determine that you will not. And having thus chosen our course, without guile, and with pure purpose, let us renew our trust in God, and go forward without fear, and with manly hearts. Adhere to your purpose and you will soon feel as well as you ever did. On the contrary, if you falter, and give up, you will lose the power of keeping any resolution, and will regret it all your life. I expect to maintain this contest until successful, or till I die, or am conquered, or my term expires, or Congress or the country forsakes me. Mr. Clay's lack of a more perfect early education, however it may be regretted generally, teaches at least one profitable lesson. It teaches that in this country, one can scarcely be so poor, but that, if he will, he can acquire sufficient education to get through the world respectably. A capacity and taste for reading gives access to whatever has already been discovered by others. It is the key, or one of the keys, to the already solved problems. And not only so, it gives a relish and facility for successfully pursuing the yet unsolved ones. The old general rule was that educated people did not perform manual labor. They managed to eat their bread, leaving the toil of producing it to the uneducated. This was not an insupportable evil to the working bees, so long as the class of drones remained very small. But now, especially in these free states, nearly all are educated, quite too nearly all, to leave the labor of the uneducated, in any wise adequate to the support of the whole. It follows from this that henceforth educated people must labor. Otherwise, education itself would become a positive and intolerable evil. No country can sustain, in idleness, more than a small percentage of its numbers. The great majority must labor at something productive. I am a little uneasy about the abolishment of slavery in this district, not but I would be glad to see it abolished, but as to the time and manner of doing it. What I did after very full deliberation, and under a heavy and solemn sense of responsibility. I can only trust in God that I have made no mistake. And by virtue of the power, and for the purpose aforesaid, I do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states, and parts of states, are, and henceforward shall be free, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of said persons. And upon this act, sincerely believed to be an act of justice, warranted by the Constitution, upon military necessity, I invoke the considerate judgment of mankind, and the gracious favor of Almighty God. Still, to use a coarse, but an expressive figure, broken eggs cannot be mended. I have issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and I cannot retract it. I have very earnestly urged the slave states to adopt emancipation, and it ought to be, and is an object with me not to overthrow, or thwart what any of them may in good faith do, to that end. The Emancipation Proclamation applies to Arkansas. I think it is valid in law, and will be so held by the courts. I think I shall not retract or repudiate it. Those who shall have tasted actual freedom, I believe, can never be slaves, or quasi-slaves again. You dislike the Emancipation Proclamation, and, perhaps, would have it retracted. You say it is unconstitutional. I think differently. But the proclamation, as law, either is valid, or is not valid. If it is not valid, it needs no retraction. If it is valid, it cannot be retracted, any more than the dead can be brought to life. On the question of liberty, as a principle, we are not what we have been. When we were the political slaves of King George, and wanted to be free, we called the maxim that all men are created equal a self-evident truth. But now when we have grown fat, and have lost all dread of being slaves ourselves, we have become so greedy to be masters that we call the same maxim a self-evident lie. I leave you, hoping that the lamp of liberty will burn in your bosoms until there shall no longer be a doubt that all men are created free and equal. Our reliance is in the love of liberty which God has planted in our bosoms. Our defense is in the preservation of the spirit which prizes liberty as the heritage of all men, in all lands, everywhere. This is a world of compensations, and he who would be no slave, must consent to have no slave. Those who deny freedom to others, deserve it not for themselves, and, under a just God, cannot long retain it. I have never had a feeling politically that did not spring from the sentiments embodied in the Declaration of Independence. I have here stated my purpose according to my view of official duty, and I intend no modification of my oft expressed personal wish that all men everywhere could be free. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in what we give, and what we preserve. We shall nobly save, or meanly lose, the last best hope of earth. The world has never had a good definition of the word liberty, and the American people, just now, are much in want of one. We all declare for liberty, but in using the same word we do not all mean the same thing. We have, as all will agree, a free government, where every man has a right to be equal with every other man. In this great struggle, this form of government and every form of human right is endangered if our enemies succeed. Every advocate of slavery naturally desires to see blasted and crushed the liberty promised the black man by the new Constitution. In the untimely loss of your noble son, our affliction here is scarcely less than your own. So much of promised usefulness to one's country, and of bright hopes for oneself and friends, have rarely been so suddenly dashed as in his fall. In this sad world of ours, sorrow comes to all, and, to the young, it comes with bitterest agony, because it takes them unawares. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement, and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid so costly a sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. In very truth he was, the noblest work of God, an honest man. I believe it is an established maxim in morals that he who makes an assertion without knowing whether it is true or false, is guilty of falsehood, and the accidental truth of the assertion does not justify or excuse him. Let every American, every lover of liberty, every well-wisher to his posterity, swear by the blood of the Revolution, never to violate in the least particular the laws of the country, and never to tolerate their violation by others. Let reverence for the laws be breathed by every American mother to the lisping babe that prattles on her lap. Let it be taught in schools, in seminaries, and in colleges. Let it be written in primers, spelling books, and in almanacs. Let it be preached from the pulpit, proclaimed in legislative halls, and enforced in courts of justice. And, in short, let it become the political religion of the nation. And let the old and the young, the rich and the poor, the grave and the gay, of all sexes and tongues, and colors and conditions, sacrifice unceasingly upon its altars. In law it is a good policy to never plead what you need not, lest you oblige yourself to prove what you cannot. The leading rule for the lawyer, as for the man of every other calling, is diligence. Leave nothing for tomorrow which can be done today. Discourage litigation. Persuade your neighbors to compromise whenever you can. Point out to them how the nominal winner is often a real loser, in fees, expenses, and waste of time. As a peacemaker, the lawyer has a superior opportunity of being a good man. There will still be business enough. Let no young man choosing the law for a calling for a moment yield to the popular belief. Resolve to be honest at all events, and if in your own judgment you cannot be an honest lawyer, resolve to be honest without being a lawyer. Let us at all times remember that all American citizens are brothers of a common country, and should dwell together in the bonds of fraternal feeling. The man does not live who is more devoted to peace than I am. None who would do more to preserve it. I have desired as sincerely as any man, I sometimes think more than any other man, that our present difficulties might be settled without the shedding of blood. Engaged, as I am, in a great war, I fear it will be difficult for the world to understand how fully I appreciate the principles of peace, inculcated in this letter, and everywhere, by the Society of Friends. Peace does not appear so distant as it did. I hope it will come soon, and come to stay, and so come as to be worth the keeping in all future time. Much is being said about peace, and no man desires peace more ardently than I. Still I am yet unprepared to give up the Union for a peace which, so achieved, could not be of much duration. In stating a single condition of peace, I mean simply to say that the war will cease on the part of the government, whenever it shall have ceased on the part of those who began it. when the conduct of men is designed to be influenced, persuasion, kind, unassuming persuasion, should ever be adopted. It is an old and a true maxim, that a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. The presidency, even to the most experienced politicians, is no bed of roses, and General Taylor, like others, found thorns within it. No human being can fill that station and escape censure. I am glad I made the late race. It gave me a hearing on the great and durable question of the age, which I could have had in no other way, and though I now sink out of view, and shall be forgotten, I believe I have made some marks which will tell for the cause of civil liberty long after I am gone. We have just carried an election on principles fairly stated to the people. Now we are told in advance, the government shall be broken up, unless we surrender to those we have beaten, before we take the offices. I have endured a great deal of ridicule without much malice, and have received a great deal of kindness, not quite free from ridicule. I am used to it. I am thankful to God for this approval of the people. But while deeply grateful for this mark of their confidence in me, if I know my heart, my gratitude is free from any taint of personal triumph. I do not impugn the motives of anyone opposed to me. It is no pleasure to me to triumph over anyone, but I give thanks to the Almighty for this evidence of the people's resolution to stand by free government and the rights of humanity. Passion has helped us, but can do so no more. It will in future be our enemy. Reason, cold, calculating, unimpassioned reason, must furnish all the materials for our future support and defense. I do not think I could myself be brought to support a man for office, whom I knew to be an open enemy of, and scoffer at, religion. In their enlightened belief, nothing stamped with the divine image and likeness was sent into the world to be trodden on, and degraded, and imbruted by its fellows. To his care commending you, as I hope in your prayers you will commend me, I bid you an affectionate farewell. Intelligence, patriotism, Christianity, and a firm reliance on him, who has never yet forsaken this favored land, are still competent to adjust, in the best way, all our present difficulty. The will of God prevails. In great contests each party claims to act in accordance with the will of God. Both may be, and one must be, wrong. If I had had my way, this war would never have been commenced. If I had been allowed my way, this war would have ended before this, but we find it still continues, and we must believe that he permits it for some wise purpose of his own, mysterious and unknown to us, and though with our limited understandings we may not be able to comprehend it, yet we cannot but believe, that he who made the world still governs it. Nevertheless, amid the greatest difficulties of my administration, when I could not see any other resort, I would place my whole reliance on God, knowing that all would go well, and that he would decide for the right. On principle, I dislike an oath which requires a man to swear he has not done wrong. It rejects the Christian principle of forgiveness on terms of repentance. I think it is enough if the man does no wrong hereafter. If God now wills the removal of a great wrong, and wills also that we of the North as well as you of the South, shall pay fairly for our complicity in that wrong, impartial history will find therein new cause to attest and revere the justice and goodness of God. To read in the Bible, as the word of God himself, that in the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, and to preach therefrom that, in the sweat of other men's faces shalt thou eat bread, to my mind can scarcely be reconciled with honest sincerity. I am very glad indeed to see you tonight, and yet I will not say I thank you for this call, but I do most sincerely thank Almighty God for the occasion on which you have called. Enough is known of Army operations within the last 5 days to claim our especial gratitude to God, while what remains undone demands our most sincere prayers to, and reliance upon, Him, without whom, all human effort is vain. We hoped for a happy termination of this terrible war long before this, but God knows best, and has ruled otherwise. We shall yet acknowledge His wisdom and our own error therein. I am much indebted to the good Christian people of the country for their constant prayers and consolations, and to no one of them, more than to yourself. All the good the Savior gave to the world was communicated through this book. But for it we could not know right from wrong. All things most desirable for man's welfare, here and hereafter, are to be found portrayed in it. Both read the same Bible, and pray to the same God, and each invokes his aid against the other. It may seem strange that any men should dare to ask a just God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other men's faces, but let us judge not that we be not judged. The prayers of both could not be answered, that of neither has been answered fully. Men are not flattered by being shown that there has been a difference of purpose between the Almighty and them. To deny it, however, in this case, is to deny that there is a God governing the world. Neither let us be slandered from our duty by false accusations against us, nor frightened from it by menaces of destruction to the government nor of dungeons to ourselves. Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us, to the end, dare to do our duty as we understand it. May the Almighty grant that the cause of truth, justice, and humanity, shall in no wise suffer at my hands. I am not at liberty to shift ground, that is out of the question. If I thought a repetition would do any good I would make it. But my judgment is it would do positive harm. The secessionists, per se, believing they had alarmed me, would clamor all the louder. I fully appreciate the present peril the country is in, and the weight of responsibility on me. I appeal to you again to constantly bear in mind that with you, and not with politicians, not with presidents, not with office seekers, but with you, is the question, shall the Union and shall the liberties of this country be preserved to the latest generation? I am a patient man, always willing to forgive on the Christian terms of repentance, and also to give ample time for repentance. Still, I must save this government if possible. In times like the present, men should utter nothing for which they would not willingly be responsible through time and eternity. I have understood well that the duty of self-preservation rests solely with the American people. My purpose is to be, in my action, just and constitutional, and yet practical, in performing the important duty, with which I am charged, of maintaining the unity, and the free principles of our common country. I freely acknowledge myself, the servant of the people, according to the bond of service, the United States Constitution, and that, as such, I am responsible to them. If as the friends of colonization hope, the present and coming generations of our countrymen shall by any means, succeed in freeing our land from the dangerous presence of slavery, and, at the same time, in restoring a captive people to their long-lost fatherland, with bright prospects for the future, and this too, so gradually, that neither races nor individuals shall have suffered by the change, it will indeed be a glorious consummation. You know I dislike slavery, and you fully admit the abstract wrong of it. The slave breeders and slave traders are a small, odious, and detested class among you, and yet in politics, they dictate the course of all of you, and are as completely your masters, as you are the master of your own Negroes. I believe this government cannot endure, permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved, I do not expect the House to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. Now I confess myself as belonging to that class in the country who contemplate slavery as a moral, social, and political evil. He, Stephen Douglas, is blowing out the moral lights around us, when he contends that whoever wants slaves has a right to hold them, that he is penetrating, so far as lies in his power, the human soul, and eradicating the light of reason and the love of liberty, when he is in every possible way preparing the public mind, by his vast influence, for making the institution of slavery perpetual and national. When Judge Douglas says that whoever, or whatever community, wants slaves, they have a right to have them, he is perfectly logical if there is nothing wrong in the institution, but if you admit that it is wrong, he cannot logically say that anybody has a right to do wrong. This is a world of compensations, and he who would be no slave, must consent to have no slave. Now, what is Judge Douglas' popular sovereignty? It is, as a principle, no other than that, if one man chooses to make a slave of another man, neither that other man nor anybody else has a right to object. An inspection of the Constitution will show that the right of property in a slave is not distinctly and expressly affirmed in it. We believe that the spreading out in perpetuity of the institution of slavery impairs the general welfare. We believe, nay, we know, that that is the only thing that has ever threatened the perpetuity of the Union itself. Let there be no compromise on the question of extending slavery. If there be, all our labor is lost, and, ere long, must be done again. You think slavery is right and ought to be extended, while we think it is wrong and ought to be restricted. That, I suppose, is the rub. It certainly is the only substantial difference between us. I say now, however, as I have all the while said, that on the territorial question, that is, the question of extending slavery under the national auspices, I am inflexible. I am for no compromise which assists or permits the extension of the institution on soil owned by the nation. One section of our country believes slavery is right, and ought to be extended, while the other believes it is wrong, and ought not to be extended. 1/8 of the whole population were colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. These slaves constituted a peculiar and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was, somehow, the cause of the war. Then came the Black Hawk War, and I was elected a captain of volunteers, a success which gave me more pleasure than any I have had since. I would like to speak in terms of praise due to the many brave officers and soldiers who have fought in the cause of the war. We never should, and I am sure, never shall be niggard of gratitude and benefaction to the soldiers who have endured toil, privations, and wounds, that the nation may live. And then, there will be some black men who can remember that, with silent tongue, and clenched teeth, and steady eye, and well-poised bayonet, they have helped mankind on to this great consummation. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. While we are grateful to all the brave men and officers for the events of the past few days, we should, above all, be very grateful to Almighty God, who gives us victory. I am greatly obliged to you, and to all who have come forward at the call of their country. All this talk about the dissolution of the Union is humbug, nothing but folly. We won't dissolve the Union, and you shan't. To the best of my judgment, I have labored for, and not against the Union. My opinion is that no state can, in any way lawfully, get out of the Union, without the consent of the others, and that it is the duty of the President, and other government functionaries to run the machine as it is. When the people rise in masses in behalf of the Union and the liberties of their country, truly may it be said, the gates of hell shall not prevail against them. I hold, that in contemplation of universal law, and of the Constitution, the union of these states is perpetual. Perpetuity is implied, if not expressed, in the fundamental law of all national governments. I, therefore, consider that in view of the Constitution and the laws, the Union is unbroken, and to the extent of my ability, I shall take care, as the Constitution itself expressly enjoins upon me, that the laws of the Union be faithfully executed in all the states. The Union is much older than the Constitution. It was formed in fact, by the Articles of Association in 1774. It was matured and continued by the Declaration of Independence in 1776. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield, and patriot grave, to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. I would save the Union. I would save it the shortest way under the Constitution. The sooner the national authority can be restored, the nearer the Union will be the Union as it was. We can scarcely dispense with the aid of West Virginia in this struggle, much less can we afford to have her against us, in Congress and in the field. Her brave and good men regard her admission into the Union as a matter of life and death. He who does something at the head of one regiment will eclipse him who does nothing at the head of 100. And now, beware of rashness. Beware of rashness, but with energy, and sleepless vigilance, go forward, and give us victories. Let your military measures be strong enough to repel the invader and keep the peace, and not so strong as to unnecessarily harass and persecute the people. I was deeply mortified by the escape of Lee across the Potomac because the substantial destruction of his army would have ended the war. We are in civil war. In such cases there always is a main question, but in this case that question is a perplexing compound, union and slavery. It thus becomes a question not of two sides merely, but of at least four sides, even among those who are for the Union, saying nothing of those who are against it. It is easy to see that, under the sharp discipline of civil war, the nation is beginning a new life. War at the best, is terrible, and this war of ours, in its magnitude and in its duration, is one of the most terrible.